Hey, let's change the oil and filter on my 2022 Suzuki GSX-R 750. So the only downside with this one is I've got to take this left fairing off to get to the drain plug and oil filter. And, it's not really a big deal. Most of it's just these screws on the outside, and that's easy. But the problem is there's a bunch of little plastic pins on the inside as well.
Yeah, okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean?
24 hours.
24 hours?
I'm going to start with the 4 outer screws. There's 1, 2, 3, and then one here on the bottom, 4. And then I'll tackle the plastic pins. All right, so all of these are off, and just always kind of keep everything in order on how you took them off, just so you know exactly where they go back. Okay, the first one is right under the bike, right here in the front, between the two halves of the fairing. And you just get a screwdriver kind of under a little tab in the front and just bring it down, and then the pin will come out. The next one is just kind of part of a little arm that spans between both sides. And you just have to take this one off, and you can leave the other one and just let this little arm hang, just to free this part of the fairing. All right, so now on the inside, there's a couple different types of tabs. So now you have the ones you push that little center button, and that's how you get it off, as opposed to lifting the little tab. There's one right there, and then there's a second one right there. So just to give you kind of an idea of exactly what I'm talking about, so you just sort of come around the front, inside here, and then there's the first one, and then it's hard to see, but the second one's right there above the radiator. All right, it's almost impossible to work and film under here. It's a very tight space, but you can see, so the little pin is pushed inside, and then the plastic pin comes right out. And that's what it looks like when it's out, compared to the ones we saw first, where you just sort of pull the tabs. Between these two halves, there's just these little tabs right there that hold this lower part onto the upper part. So just carefully pull these out. Okay, so those are all the fasteners. Again, it's just those 4 plastic tabs, so I easily found them all. And it comes off pretty easily. Just keep in mind that there's a bunch of little tabs that sort of go under this part of the fairing and into these little grooves right here. And so just carefully work it off. And then you see that hole right there. That's for this thing right there, and that's in there kind of tight. So just you just pull when it comes off. So just sort of carefully pull, and then that'll release. And just be careful with these 2 little tabs that are in those things. And it's a little bit of a pain, but just carefully work it out. It comes, it ultimately comes right off. All right, I want both wheels on the ground again for this, as opposed to it being up on the rear stand and then leaning forward a little bit. And I want it to lean to the left a little bit too, because that's where the drain plug is, on the left side of the pan. And I propped it up again on the side stand, but it's on this box that collapsed a little bit, but it's still propping it up, more than if it was just on the ground. And then if you come down here, you'll see there's the drain plug right there. Again, it's on the left. So both wheels on the ground, lean a little bit to the left, and that's the perfect angle to get this oil out. Unlike the Ducati that you want to drain it cold just because it's so notorious for holding oil up in the engine for a long time, this one, like most bikes, this one I'm going to heat up and drain the oil when it's fairly hot, so it flows better. And what I'll do is I'll just let this idle until it's up to about 135 degrees. It's at 112 now. Let it cool down for a little bit, let the oil drain back down to the pan, and then I'll take off the drain plug. Okay, I stopped it at 140. It doesn't have to be real hot. And now I'm just going to give it about 10 minutes or so just to sort of cool down a little bit and drain back to the pan, and then I'll pull the plug. And real quick while we're waiting, this is just a vent hose here, and the bottom of that just attaches to a little groove on the bottom of this fairing. I'll show you how to put that back on, but it just slides into place. It's very easy. Also, I got a fourth bike. I wasn't going to tell anyone, but while we're waiting, I might as well show you. So, I got the Suzuki and the Ducati, and then the Enfield that I'm almost done with. We're going to get this sucker knocked out soon. But then look at this. It's a vintage Vespa, 150 horsepower. Look at this thing. It was a barn find, so you can see it's really dirty. But look at this. So excited to work on this thing. Look at that two-stroke, 1950s. Look at that speedometer. Look at that. Vintage Vespa. And what's crazy is that it's all plastic. Even the wheels are plastic. I mean, who would have thought that's how they made these things back then? But I don't know. You know what they say, plastic fantastic. And look at this. Look at that. Look at those chicks right there. I don't know. They must be like models from the 1950s. I don't know.
Party is over. Close the gates. What? Elsa, no, wait. Give me my glove.
I might put a Trask turbo on it. What do you think? I don't know. Maybe a supercharger. I don't know. I'm still deciding. And yes, it belongs to my neighbor's kid. All right, the hard part is over. Just getting that fairing off. So now everything's going to be very straightforward. That sucker was on there tight. They always over-tighten these at the factory. Let me see how hot this is. I want to be able to do this with my fingers. That's not so bad. And as always, loosen the filler cap just so air can kind of flow through there to help strain the oil. I've just got it resting on the top. All right, there's the oil filter. I just put a filter wrench on the end because this thing is on there tight. They always over-tighten these things at the factory. But next is to get that off. Now, a lot of people put aluminum foil kind of right here on the header, just not so oil doesn't get on it. But just the way this is positioned, there's no way oil is going to get on that. It's just going to sort of fall right straight down between the pan and the pipe. So I'm going to just sort of take my chances and not do that. Although I did break it down, but once I saw it, I don't think it's necessary. It's actually not too bad. You definitely need this this wrench, but you couldn't do it by hand. But I had a Yamaha MT-09, and that filter was on there so tight from the factory. My God, I needed a like a large torque wrench just so I had the leverage to get it off. See that? It's falling right between. Ooh, it was close. It was close. But it did not touch the header pipe. All right, everything's just kind of dripping, so I'm going to let this drain for, I don't know, maybe a half hour. I'll check on it. I'm going to go upstairs and walk the dog, and then I'll be back to check on this. All right, I'm back. It's been, I don't know, 45 minutes, and it's still dripping just a little bit, I think. Let's look. Yeah, there it goes. See, that's why I like to keep it a little bit to the left as opposed to straight up on a rear stand, because it's right at the angle of where this drain plug is, and I feel like it just helps it all kind of drip out. I mean, at this point, I don't think it really matters, but just kind of helps ensure that everything comes out. I don't think there's anything really dripping from where the oil filter was. Yeah, that one looks pretty done. I don't know, there might be one drop every minute or two, but it is still just a little bit here. But I'm gonna put the oil filter on now and then just kind of see what this does. And right now there's no performance mods or anything on the bike, so I'm just going to use Suzuki's official stuff. So quick and easy. Okay, for this break-in service, I'm going with Suzuki's. It's what, their X-R, if I'm saying that right. I'm going with their R5000 ton W40. It's just a regular mineral oil. It is not a synthetic blend and is not a full synthetic. And Suzuki recommends going with this for their break-in oil change and actually for the second oil change as well before switching to synthetic. And the local dealers in my area do the exact same thing. So I'm going to go with that and R5000 10W40. All right, so I'm going to put a little fresh oil on the O-ring of the filter, and I'm going to fill it up about 3/4 with oil and then screw it back on. A little bit more. That's pretty good. I always believe on these bikes you can actually just kind of hand tighten this, just kind of get it as tight as you can with your hand, and then you're good. I rarely put a wrench on there to actually tighten it down. I don't think it needs to be that tight, and it also makes it easier to get off for the next oil change. So I'm going to just tighten this the best I can with my hand, and then it's good to go. Yeah. And that's it. And on this is, like I always say, you know, snug but not too tight. But, you know, just tighten it down. You don't have to be quite as careful with this as with the Ducati, but just nice and snug. That's good. I gotta say, this might be one of the cleanest oil changes I have ever done. I mean, there was barely anything to wipe up. This just all came out really clean. There is a cricket in my workstation. Okay, if you saw my Ducati oil change, I used this open pan, and I did the same thing here because I'm going to pour it into this measuring cup, and you can measure quarts or liters with this, and it's just going to give me, let me know exactly what I took out, and it's going to give me a good idea of what to put back in, because you never want to overfill. Okay, so on that side, it's almost exactly 3 quarts, or about 2 3/4 liters. So now I know exactly what came out, and I'll probably put it in 2.5 liters just to start and check the sight glass, because it's always better to put a little bit too little in than too much. It's much easier to just top off as needed than to have to take some out. So I'm going to put in 2.5 liters, check the sight glass, and then go from there. And I'm going to leave the fairing off just on the very, very slim chance that something catastrophic happens, like the drain bolt doesn't hold or just something crazy. But yeah, I know nothing's going to happen, but just err on the side of caution, I'm going to put the fairing on last. Okay, so I put in about 2 3/4 quarts. The bottles are actually labeled quarts, not liters. And when I checked the sight glass, it was above the top line. But I knew it was going to be a little bit high because I didn't fill the oil filter. I only filled the oil filter about halfway, so that was going to fill up. So I started for a few minutes, let it drain for about 10 minutes. When I checked it again, it was just above the bottom line. You know, enough that it wasn't low, but it was just above the bottom line. I waited about another half hour, checked it again, and it was almost right between the lines, maybe just a hair below it, but still between them, still where you want it. So now, prior to me doing this oil change, it was right at the top line. It might have even been a hair over the top line. The dealer kind of pushed it, you know, prior to me buying this bike. So it was, I wouldn't say it was overfilled, but it was a little bit higher than it should be. So that's why there's this little discrepancy between how much I took out and how much I put back in, and the fact that a little bit less is kind of right where I want it. But I'm going to check it again in the morning after it's been sitting for hours and it's cold. I'm going to take a good ride, come back, let it sit, check it again, and then that'll be my final measurement. And if it's a little bit lower than I'd like, I'll top it off just a bit, just to kind of get it right between the lines, maybe just a hair above that, but still below the top line, and then it's good to go. But for now, it's looking good. So let's get this fairing back on and get this wrapped up. As I mentioned earlier, this hose just kind of slides right into this loop. It's a loose fit, and then when you put the fairing on, it's going to be facing, facing properly down the vent. Okay, well, it's hard to film this because I would have just kind of been in the way of the camera, but it's much easier to put it on than it is to take it off. Everything just kind of snaps into place. Just pay attention to all the little tabs and everything. Just make sure they're slotting in properly. And you got to push a little bit harder on a couple of them than you would think. But just, be careful, but don't be shy with it, and everything will snap into place. And it went on fairly easily. And I got the screws on just kind of hand tight for now. I'm going to put on these plastic pins on the bottom where you saw me take them off. And then this bike is wrapped up. And yeah, I got to clean this. Just comes from the road. This white just shows everything. I mean, it looks amazing on the bike, but it gets dirty real easily. But usually it just sort of stays on the bottom, but I'm going to clean the bike up tomorrow. Okay, so I came down this morning and checked the sight glass, and it was almost between the lines. So I just literally did like a little spill into the funnel, just barely any, and now it's dead between the lines. I took it for about a 40-mile ride, came back, let it sit for a few hours, checked it again, and again, it's just right dead between the lines on the sight glass. So the bike is now good to go. It's broken in. As far as the chain, I cleaned and lubed it about 150 miles ago, and it does not look like it needs to be adjusted, although that doesn't mean anything until I measure it. But when I looked at the Ducati chain, I could tell it needed to be adjusted. This one looks okay. But I'll measure it, I'll see where it's at, and hopefully I might be able to get a few hundred more miles out of it before I have to adjust it. But if I do, I'll make a quick video and just show you how to do this. It's a little different than the Ducati. It's not a single-sided swing arm, and you have to loosen the axle nut to do it, but we'll see. We'll see if I have to do it or not. But otherwise, the bike is broken in. Everything is perfect. It was not hard. And again, like I always say, if you have the tools, if you have the space, always do this yourself. You'll save some money, and you'll know it gets done right. So thanks again for watching. I hope this was all helpful. And if you're new, please subscribe and stick around. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up. I'll be reviewing both of these bikes, the Suzuki and Ducati. I have a Royal Enfield Bullet that I'm about to finish restoring. And for everyone that's been following that, it's coming next, I promise. That's going to be my priority from here on until it's finished. I really appreciate everyone that's been watching my videos. Thanks again for everyone who subscribed. Please like the video. Please leave a comment. All of that helps the channel. And until next time, guys, is $250 million really too much to ask? I mean, the yacht and Learjet are not going to pay for themselves. Seriously.